There's something outside of you that's going to be that missing piece for you. And what I discovered, not only through my own life experience and through teaching, is just it always comes back to you. You are the missing piece. When you come back to yourself and you're willing to do one of the hardest things I think known to man, which is just be still and listen and be willing and open to receive the answer, that the forgetting starts to go away because you start to remember. As a fixer, I just want to keep everyone happy. As long as everyone's happy, I'm happy. So when someone else is experiencing negative emotion, I immediately need to fix it so that I can feel comfortable. I started having chronic UTIs, and I mean horrible, over and over and over and over and over again. I mean, thinking that in one calendar year, I'd had like 15, and I felt so disempowered, and I didn't know what was going on. And it wasn't until I decided I was done going to the doctors. I said, there's something going on. My body is trying to tell me something, and I'm not listening. And it was...
Welcome back to Flipping the Lid. You know what we do here by now. We like to have the real, raw conversations with some of the most influential and impactful people on this planet. And today, I promise you, we have an absolute dynamite human being for you. I had the privilege of witnessing this woman before I got to meet her. And it was at an event that I went to support a good friend of mine, but it was a room full of powerful women who had a chance to just step into a room, to be seen, to be heard, to share their stories, and to be motivated by people like Anniston. She took this stage with this raw humility and had the ability to transfer her knowledge, her wisdom, and her experiences in words that became so accessible and gave the entire room of women permission to talk about a topic that's often hush hush. The courage and the strength just told me everything about who she was. And her husband was just on the show a couple of weeks ago because Rudi Riekstins and her have built an amazing life together. But she is a woman that is a transformational mentor. She's got high levels of corporate leadership. She's now a transformational human being today that uses numerology and soul work and deep work within people to help them get clarity and step into it. And largely as it relates to helping women remember who they are and fully leverage their lives in this world. So Anniston, I am so excited to have you with us today.
Well, thank you so much. I am extremely excited to be here and for this conversation. I love your show. I love your style. And I always know when I listen that you're going to go there. So I'm here for it. I'm ready.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I don't know how many people who've been on my show have actually listened to it ahead of time, but I love that you have had a couple of those at least to listen to. My friend, you and Rudi are two people that I would say it was easy instantly. And though we're still building a relationship and getting to know each other, there's just a groundedness and a clarity to who both of you are as individuals and who the two of you are together in the world. The only question I ask every guest, and you'll know this because you've listened to the show, after I introduce them, regardless of whatever I've said, is who are you in your words?
In my words, I am an extension of a creator that is far bigger than I will ever fully understand. And I am someone who is committed to remembering who I really am. And in the process, helping other people remember too.
So I appreciate that part of how you answered who you are is the fact that you're constantly committed to remembering who you are and helping bring others clarity into who you are. That's obviously a huge portion of who you are and how you live. You just said it. It's very clear. It's very transparent. What got you onto this path? What allowed you to realize that you had forgotten or did not know who you were? And how did you start rediscovering who you are?
For me, that path started, I would say, in my early 20s. Just this incessant urge to want to learn and to ask big questions. And it was completely selfish. Like, I just wanted to not feel lost anymore. I wanted to know who I was. I wanted to know what I was good at. I had been a consummate, mask wearer. Like, I had so many masks and I believed I was the masks. And I didn't know who I was. And so that led, of course, to a lot of confusion and a lot of lack of fulfillment. And so that set me off on a path. And that path, basically was a very winding one, but essentially just through life experiences and through just one learning after another, I started to feel more like myself. Like, I started to reconnect with the power that's within me. And I believe that we are all, we come here, and I think there was this understanding that, it wasn't something that was wrong with me, that I think it's all by design, that we forget. you know? And the spiritual belief is that's veil of forgetfulness. We forget who we are. We forget what we're connected to, or the source of power that we're connected to. And we forget what our purpose is, what we're here to do. And then the work is to start moving back towards yourself, which really drew me in. And when I met Rudi, really catalyzed me. Like him and I together, there was something about him and I coming together that's when the deep work really began. And so for me, it was yes, doing the work on myself, but really when I started helping other people, interestingly enough, is when I feel like I started to understand it at a deeper level. I think until you're able to teach something, you haven't learned the whole lesson.
Yeah. By the way, you said a whole lot in that answer, and there's about 14 things I want to pull up on. And so what I am going to do is I'm just going to start it with where you ended, because I think that it's extremely clarifying to actually help other people. I find it to be one of the most effective mirrors. It's impossible for me anyway, or anybody who I think truly desires to be impactful and congruent, to help someone, communicate with someone, reflect things back to someone, and not see these glaring gaps within ourselves where we ourselves either are or are not congruent in that path. And so we will come full circle back to that in just a second, because there's a lot to be said with that statement. The piece that jumped out most, though, is that you started by saying that you were being selfish by trying to discover who you were. And I am a big believer that we have all of these conditioned ways of believing and existing, but why is it bad for us to be selfish enough to discover who we are?
I think that's a really great question, first of all. And I love the way that you phrase that. Rudi and I were literally just having this conversation. We went on a walk yesterday, and, he was saying, we were talking about how it really is in the giving of yourself that you discover true fulfillment. Mm-hmm. But what I said, I was like, well, but first comes being selfish before you become selfless, because unless you're selfish enough, right, to take the time to go inward and actually to really ask the hard questions and reconnect, like, you're not going to have anything to give. Like, you won't, like, you can only give what's inside of you, and to the degree that you've healed is the degree that you can heal other people. And so I think there is this idea that, if you're just always focused on yourself, that's selfish. And I don't agree with that. I actually think there needs to be an element of selfishness in order to become more selfless and serving to other people.
I often tell people, I believe that being selfish is actually the least selfish thing you can do. Yep. Particularly for people who actually have heart and who care for others, right? And so I called attention to you saying that language, even because it's like, that's part of what is screwed up in all of this whole process of healing, is that taking any time or applying any energy or having any inquiry or giving any permission to yourself is therefore viewed as selfish, because it's not, potentially serving of the creator or serving of the other people that can be impacted in the ways that sometimes it's conditioned. And so I'm really grateful that you were able to shift and distinguish through that. You also talked about this forgetting process. And I really liked the way you said that. In fact, I don't know that I've heard people say it through the lens of forgetting. I've heard it in many different descriptors. Why is it that forgetting is the language that you use in describing this kind of lost element of our journeys? And what was it about you that you forgot the most?
I think the reason why I tend to use the word forgetting is because it indicates that you were never disconnected from, right? Like it's when you forget something, it was something that was there, you've just forgotten it, right? Yeah. And, for me, purpose was a big theme for me. I really wanted to know my purpose, and because of that, that's really what informed my book, The Universe is Hiring. And I just was like obsessed with this idea of there being a unique purpose for each individual, but mostly validating that there was a purpose for me, right? Like that's really what I was seeking the most. And for a long time, I had felt like it was something I needed to find outside of myself. And so it sends you on this wild goose chase, and it validates the misbelief that there is something outside of you that knows better. There's something outside of you that's going to be that missing piece for you. And what I discovered not only through my own life experience, and through teaching is just, it always comes back to you. You are the missing piece. And so when you come back to yourself and you're willing to do one of the hardest things I think known to man, which is just be still and listen and be willing and open to receive the answer, that the forgetting starts to go away because you start to remember. Mm-hmm. And that remembrance comes from such a deep, authentic place that it comes with the clarity and with the certainty, I think, that's the big word, certainty, that we're all searching for.
Mm-hmm. I actually really love the nuance of the forgetting process. In fact, though I don't use that language, one of the things that I've said often is that it's about helping people return to who they already are, right? As well as who they're becoming. Not just, who are you, but who you already are, right? Because to your point, there's an implication that you weren't that person before, when in reality, most of us are born as the most brightest, most authentic burning light we'll ever be. And yes, there's a conditioning and beating out process that we forget. And we have to remind ourselves of that. You talked about this process of being lost and realizing it relatively early in life. And so could you give us a little bit of insights into the earlier parts of your life that maybe led to these sets of beliefs or limitations or lack of clarity in who you were?
For me, one of the core wounds that I really experienced early in life was this belief that I didn't matter. Or that, I was the consummate people pleaser, middle child. I wanted to keep everyone happy. My sister was a little drama queen. And then, I had younger siblings. And so I took the role of just being the peacemaker. I just wanted everyone to be happy. I'll take care of myself. Right. And so I think for me, taking on that belief that everyone else's needs and beliefs mattered more than my own, I took that up, through into my teens and my early 20s. And that's when you really start to outsource things that you should never outsource, right? You really start to outsource when you don't believe that you matter or that you should be taking up as much space as everybody else. I think you really start looking outside of yourself for belonging and for validation, because if you won't give that to yourself, right, then you've got to get it somewhere else, right? Which then, of course, you're just going to see the reflection back at you that you're not validated, that you don't belong. And so that's really where a lot of the confusion came from, because I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And I didn't feel like any one gift of mine was special or unique. I literally felt like I was vanilla. That's what it was like. I was vanilla. I was mediocre. And I was just looking outside of myself to see, well, that person seems to have those skill sets and they're really successful. So let me try that on. Right. And of course that didn't work. And trying a lot of things that I thought I should be doing because it just seemed like that was what was accepted and that was what was expected. And, I came from a really amazing family. It wasn't my parents were always very supportive of me, but I was always seeking that specialness and I just never found it.
Yeah.
That's really where it started.
Yeah. And I love how much depth you put in there while also not even giving anything specific. And there's a lot to that. I saw that, and that's okay. I'm going to let that one sit because we're going to come back to a couple pieces that matter. But truly, there's depth and brilliance in all of the ways that you give your answers, and you clearly have walked the walk. Even the fact that you started by saying my core wound, like you went directly there instead of going into story mode, which was totally fine. But what I also highlight, and I just say this not so much for your purposes, but for those that are listening, there were also multiple moments in there that you said, I should have done this, or I should have felt this way. And I often always, whenever I hear that, have to pause and say, should is a shame-based word because it implies whoever you are or whatever you're doing, it's not good enough. Yeah. And so even the language choices that we use, whether they're real and existing today for us, or they were a moment in time, it demonstrates a reflection of the frequency that you're putting out, the energy and the shame and the blame state that you were existing in, trying to find belonging, which is what we all want anyway, right? We all want to be connected at the deepest level. And so you found yourself going all over and trying to find your place. And then you landed on a cruise ship. So like, give us a little bit of insight into like, where did you start working on a cruise ship for 2 years? And what was that experience like for you?
So I had graduated from college and I had gotten a job at this agency that I had worked my butt off. Like it was in Dallas, Texas, and I'd worked my butt off to get a job there. And, I felt like I had arrived, right? As you do when you've worked for a goal for a really long time. And I was there for a couple of years. And then I started to notice this like unsettled feeling, like this discontent setting in, which I, of course, repressed as much as possible and just tried to talk myself out of it, as you do, right? Because you're like, you're crazy. Come on, don't blow this up. Like, this is something you've always wanted. You wanted to work at this agency. We decided this, right? And I remember distinctly there was one day I was sitting in my cubicle and there was like a pod of cubicles around me. And I was looking to the person to my right and he'd been there for 20 years, sitting in the same place for 20 years. And then the person behind me had been there like for 15 and then someone else. I mean, like there was a lot of longevity around me. And while for some people that would be really exciting and maybe encouraging and inspiring, for me, all of a sudden, I just had this like, I cannot be that person that is sitting in this little cubicle. Yeah. I just can't. And I had this like just crazy idea in my mind I was like, I just want to travel. And I had all this student debt I was about to have to start paying off. And I was making pennies. Like I was literally like barely like making it by. So I just had this thought. I was like, I think I'm just going to go work on a cruise ship. Mind you, I had never stepped foot on a ship. Never. I just assumed. I watched The Love Boat. Okay. So The Love Boat qualified me apparently for working on a cruise ship. And so
I love you started up for a job and you'd never been on a ship, by the way. That's amazing.
Never been on a ship. I didn't even know the jobs I was applying for. Like I didn't really understand what they were, but I just thought like, I don't know why. I just have this feeling like I just really want to do it. And eventually, like, I mean, they didn't answer me for months and I wound up, was talking to my sister one day and she said, would you believe that my roommate actually used to work on cruise ships? Maybe she knows someone. And then from that conversation, like I was down there interviewing within 2 weeks and like a week later I was on a ship. It just happened so fast. And, it was one of my first, I would say, definitely not my last, but one of my first massive leaps, like into the unknown for me. That was me following my gut. It was me following this crazy desire of my heart, having no idea what was going to happen. But I kept thinking, okay, what's the worst thing? I was like, well, the worst thing is I wind up back home on my parents' couch with my tail between my legs and I start over. And I was like, all right, well, I guess that's not so bad. So let's do this. And it wound up, being just one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I worked on ships for about 5 years before I met Rudi, and then got off ships after that.
Did you meet on a ship?
No, we actually met at a conference in Orlando in Disney World.
Okay. Well, I love though that both of you worked on cruise ships for like 3 to 5 years of your lives. And the fact that that's not where you met is also really cool, but it's another one of those synchronicities that's just beautiful. And yet you surrendered to not knowing, you opened yourself to what was possible, and it became one of the greatest experiences of your life. What do you think you learned most in your experience on cruise ships over the course of 5 years?
Oh my gosh, it prepared me so beautifully. Like, I do believe, and I'm sure you believe as well, Brian, that, everything is always preparing you. You just have no idea how. And this was one of those moments where I was like, I don't know what this is leading to. But so when I first started on ships, I was hired as part of the cruise director staff. So essentially that meant I was spending my time hosting karaoke or shuffleboard or some other fun game. And I did that for about 1.5 years. And then I was like, okay, now I need to make some real money. So there was a position on board that basically was someone who would get up on stage. They would talk about all the shopping ashore. And it was kind of a sales position, but it would mean that I needed to generate a lot of traffic to come in for these events, like and fill a theater. And then I would do this a couple of times a week. And so I learned what it was to create events that would move people, right? And that would generate emotion and that would take people on a journey. And it taught me that I can stand and speak on a microphone for hours at a time without a script. It taught me how to handle an audience that you can't control. It taught me all kinds of things. I had a little staff that worked for me. And so what it was really doing was preparing me for my life's work in a way that I never would have anticipated. I mean, I used to have to, and this is back in really the position was kind of like the OG influencer. Okay. Like I had a channel. I had my own little channel on the cruise ship, and I would just talk about all the amazing shopping ashore, and I would promote it, and I would talk about all the things that I liked. And so I would have to have broadcasts set up, and then they would come and then they would film me, and I would have to do it in like one take because they had very little time. And so over and over and over again, I had to get good at speaking into a camera and this speaking off the cuff. Like a lot of the things that I do today and I take for granted I've just had so many reps of doing that, you know?
Yeah. By the way, and I think reps are a very important thing, right? We really do learn even who we are even more through the actions that we take and the feedback it gives us if we're paying attention, right? And we can read and learn from the experiences that we've had, should we choose to take that as lesson that builds on itself. You said something really cool in there, though. You said it really taught me how to essentially put on a performance, bring people into an experience and a story and evoke the emotion. And right, you hit on a few really critical components that was beyond just your ability to speak on the fly. It was really about curating this experience. And that's, I think, something that's very fleeting, especially in today's world. It's not a skill set or something that I think many people in businesses really understand, is that experience and the experiential learning that goes through that. So could you break down for us just a little bit of some of the key takeaways that you learned in doing that, and how does that show up in your work today?
Oh my gosh, so many. So for me, it was really, number one, connection always trumps anything, right? So I would literally be just walking around the ship and meeting people and saying, hey, like, welcome aboard. Like, how can I help you? How can I serve you? And so I would start these conversations from a really just the intention of just building rapport. And I think that's kind of a lost art. And to be honest, in a lot of ways, that, just looking somebody in the eye and asking how they are, and then finding something to relate to, and then a personal invitation. Like that was, it's not revolutionary, but it is kind of revolutionary. And so that taught me a lot about just being able to meet people where they're at and to come from a place of service. And then that energy, like I would pack out the theater. Everyone would want to come. The other thing that I would say really was instilled in me was like, if people don't feel anything, that's it. Like if you're not giving an opportunity for someone to feel, to have a real emotion, which means telling stories, being vulnerable.
Yep.
If I just got up on stage and was talking about here's St. Thomas and here's and there was zero personal stories, zero vulnerability from me. If I didn't create that safe space in there, then they wouldn't have an experience. It would just be all up here, which they would forget most of the minute they walk out of that theater. The other thing I would say that really I learned that informs so much of my work today, and I've brought this into doing trainings with sales teams, which I still do, is really the power of frequency. This is when I learned it. I learned it over and over and over again, that what I'm feeling and the energy I am bringing onto that stage. Like I could be saying all the right words. I knew my material, but it was all about how I was feeling. If I was bringing stress and fear and, oh my gosh, what if I'm not going to miss my sales targets? Or what if what if I mess up and I'm not perfect? Like if I brought any of that fear, you could just feel it. Like They could feel it. And their response to me was so different. And so I really started flexing and like trying new things of like, well, if I do this, how will they respond? If I feel this way. And so when I left ships eventually and then worked shoreside and started training people that were in that position, I always started with energy. Always. Because you can give everyone the same scripts, the same tools, and the results will vary greatly to the degree that they have the right energy.
Yeah. I mean, you and I, you, me, and Rudi, we essentially do the same work.
Yep.
It's different in how it's packaged and how we communicate it, but it's the same thing. I mean, that at the end of the day, what you just said in there is connection and energy, which at the end of the day, connection is what we all want most. And what we speak about in our language is that the second you protect yourself, right? Anything you have justified, protect, defend, anytime that armor goes up at all, the second you protect yourself, you disconnect yourself from the two things you want most, to be seen and understood and connected at the deepest level. And you disconnect yourself from who you are and what you want. But this brings me back to, as well, one of the statements that I learned from one of the volunteer coordinators from one of the largest nonprofits in our state. And she spoke 5 words of Spanish, and 95% of her population she serves is 100% Spanish speaking. She's family to them. She said, Brian, the heart will speak more clearly than any words ever will. And you just gave a masterclass on that in terms of that experience. I love that. And by the way, that's the energy that I felt from you in the room that I had the privilege of witnessing you share your story. Both the vulnerabilities, the depth, but the energy and the openness, which was the invitation to bring everybody in. And it was so evident and felt. And you and I both know, because we've traveled and been on many stages in front of many trained speakers who say all the right things and do all the right coordinated movements. They will never move a room like you did. And it's energy and connection, which I so appreciate how you went and went down that path. You said,
I also would say, if you don't mind me interjecting,
please.
And one thing is the intention part. It's what is, like, I believe that if you're walking in the room and your focus is on, okay, I've got to get this right, or outcome, right? So if you're getting on a stage and you're presenting and your hope is that you're going to fill a program or something, you know what I mean? Like, and that's your intention, your energy field becomes very narrow.
Agree.
And versus if you're walking in there truly with you really taking the time to ground into what do I want these individuals to feel, and what do I want them to be able to do after I speak? And you're truly focusing outward, which, by the way, is also a great way to reduce fear and anxiety. Your energy field gets super wide and enveloping, and people will feel that. Like, they will immediately relax because they feel the truth of you and what your intention is.
Well, and what I even appreciate about what you just said there is, here's the reality. Connection and energy are essentially the outcome of awareness and intentionality. Yep. Right? And so if you are aware and intentional in each and every one of these components, what we want, seek, and desire, but seems most fleeting, is connection, right? Energy is the pathway to get there, but the only way to calibrate our energy is with awareness and intentionality, right? Because we got to clear the fields that are blocking it inside ourselves and outside of others, right? And any, to your point, agenda that takes you out of being present in this moment. And in this process of growth and journey, the thing you said right after your cruise ships is that not long after is when you met Rudi. Now, today's not about Rudi. He got 2 episodes, and that's good for him. He's got all that time. Today's 100% about you. But what you said specifically is what I want to focus on. You said that meeting him catalyzed a huge portion of the next phase of your development. And that's the part I want to focus on. And where you want to give him the influence or credit for the role that he played, feel free, but this is your journey. So what was it about him, the timing, the interactions, or where you were at in your journey that truly catalyzed it? And what did that, catalyzing look like in the process?
Okay. So when we met, I don't know if he shared with you, we were engaged 2 months after we met, and we married 6 months after we met. I mean, it was
we didn't talk about that. That's amazing. That's crazy fast. Wow. Yeah.
But I had just gotten out of a 2-year relationship that I had left 2 weeks prior to meeting Rudi. I'd just gotten out of a relationship because I had decided I was probably never going to get married, as you do when you're not with the right person. Right. I just had to follow my heart. That was another one of those leaps that I had to make, where it didn't make logical sense to anybody because it was a great relationship, but I just knew, I just had this knowing. And so when I met Rudi, it was almost like there was a remembrance there. There was this, we immediately connected on our vision. We had the same visions. We had the same ideas of how we wanted our life to look. And so really grounding in, he created a safe space for me to really build roots. Up until that point, I was all over the place. I was traveling the world and I was doing all of these things. Like I hadn't actually really grounded enough to start building anything. And when I say that like things really sped up and it catalyzed, what it really did was it catalyzed me to start doing the work, because I finally was like still enough and grounded enough to actually stop running away from myself. Because I think a lot of that traveling and being everywhere was also partly avoidance of, when you're busy all the time, right? It's really an intimacy issue, and it's not necessarily an intimacy issue with other people, although it often is. It's mostly with yourself. Mm-hmm. They say intimacy is into me, I see, right? Yeah. And if you can't see into yourself and you can't actually spend the time doing it, then it's very hard for you to do that with other people. And with Rudi, because we were so connected spiritually and mentally and emotionally, he created this like safe foundation for me to really go deep. And this was it's catalyzed these years. And then also just this exploration and curiosity. And, that's when we started hosting these small groups in our home. Like we just knew we were both stuck in corporate America. I had no idea how we were going to get out of that. Like this was our source of income, but we were feeling driven to like start sharing with people. And so this was back when meetups were around. Like, I don't know if you ever did meetups. Yep. So, I just one day I went on, I was like, Rudi, I was like, if we don't rip this Band-Aid, we're never going to do it. We're never going to feel ready. And so I posted, a meetup for like small group coaching if you want to come, and it was partly intuitive coaching too, because we're both really intuitive. And believe it or not, people came. The first time it was 2 people, and then it was 3 people. And then it slowly built and built. And we did that for 3 years. And when we left, we moved, which is why we stopped doing it. But we had like 200 people that were like members of this coaching group and whatever. And so it was through the process of being brave enough to start that actually really, I feel like, deepened that. And because we were doing it together, I feel like I gave him the courage and he gave me the courage. It was like we weren't doing it on our own. And he's always seen me in a way that I wasn't able to see myself yet. He has this gift about he can really see the highest and greatest expression of somebody. And at first it would really piss me off, because he'd be like, I see you as this bold woman who's like stepping out. And I was like, that is not who I am. Like, leave me in with my books in the library behind closed doors, and I'm comfortable there. So he really encouraged me, and I did the same thing for him. We decided we were not going to let each other give up on our dreams and on our purpose, and we were going to keep pushing each other, and we've done that. Yeah.
There's a lot in that answer as well that I'm sure we're going to get to here in the remaining parts of our interview. But the most important question through all that, and this is a chance for you to come back to the specificity that was avoided earlier. What were you avoiding within yourself that he allowed you the safety to go to?
Feeling. I was avoiding feeling. Like, and I mean like actually allowing myself to feel. I had a really hard time with anyone around me. I became like the fixer, like I don't know if you're a fixer, but as a fixer, you think, I just want to keep everyone happy, and I want everyone to, as long as everyone's happy, I'm happy. But really what's underneath that is I feel really uncomfortable experiencing my own emotion. So when someone else is experiencing negative emotion, I immediately need to fix it so that I can feel comfortable. Right. And it was really this fear of what would happen if I actually allowed myself to feel the repressed anger, if I actually allowed myself to feel the sadness. Like, and every now and again, I would feel it in there, but then I would, immediately go get busy learning something else. I was very mental. Everything was very conceptual. And I thought that was okay. I actually had this story that like, I would look at people who would like experience like a lot of emotion and kind of think like, they didn't have all their shit together. You know what I mean? Like they need to like, I'm so spiritual and I never have, I've got it all under control. Well, I had nothing under control.
Which is usually the case, by the way, when you see people that don't feel anything.
They don't feel anything, but I had the story and I was like, I'm going to avoid any of that. And so I would do the work right up until it required me to feel a lot of things. And that's when things shifted for me because my body started to rebel. And that's the story I shared on that stage at Align, was just that I started having chronic UTIs. And I mean, horrible, over and over and over and over and over again. I mean, I think that in one calendar year, it had like 15. I mean, it was just this very disruptive and I felt so disempowered and I didn't know what was going on. And it wasn't until I decided I was done going to the doctors. I was done like shredding my body with the antibiotics and just, I said, there's something going on. My body is trying to tell me something and I'm not listening. And it was that one singular question that I asked that really shifted for me, because it allowed in the asking of the question and me actually making space to receive the answer, because I really wanted to know. And I really believed that there was something I was missing and not hearing, that a lot of repressed memories started coming forward. And these were memories of sexual assault. They were memories of just really, I would say, times that I would have felt the most victimized in my life that I had never shared with anyone, nobody. Because if you don't talk about it, then it doesn't exist, right? It's like it didn't actually happen. The only problem with that is your body is a record keeper, right? And so it was through that process that as I started to uncover everything, I worked with a hypnotherapist. I did all kinds of things. I did a lot of forgiveness therapy, that I allowed myself to finally feel. And I recognized and realized that those emotions I had been avoiding for so long were actually the direct path to everything that I'd been looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. I resonate with everything you just said for very different reasons, right? I didn't feel until I was 32 years old, even though I thought I did, right? And I'm able to tie it back to moments that I can very clearly know when I shut it off and why I shut it off and all of the above. But at the end of the day, I'd been teaching this concept of human connection for years before that. But human connection without emotion is not human connection. And you even said that in the experiences that you create. Unless you get somebody to feel and embody that experience, if it remains intellectual, that's where it stays and it gets stuck and it gets trapped and it doesn't allow for the freedom. Thank you for sharing that as quickly and as clearly as you just did. The truth of the matter is, I do believe that, I know this is my purpose in life, but it aligns, I think, with what you two are both doing with yours. I believe that my reason for existence is to allow my truth to give others permission to live theirs. Right. And not only does me speaking my truth, just like you just did, free me of the burdens of it every time I normalize it and speak about it, but it gives others the same permission to be able to lean in. And so without unpacking all of the stories behind it, when was the first moment you remember being able to speak it out loud, and what did you experience in that moment?
Oh gosh. So when I actually asked the question of what is my body trying to tell me, and those experiences started coming back, I was actually in New York City on a business trip, and I was there for a training, and my flight was very, synchronistically completely canceled. So I was stuck in a hotel room for a whole day just on my own, which was just such a gift. So I flew home the next morning, and I asked Rudi if he would sit outside with me. And I said, I really need to tell you a lot of things. I just need to say it out loud. And I just need you to listen. And, I think him being willing to be that silent witness for me, he didn't coach me out of it, it just allowed, it was actually in speaking it out loud that I was able to connect with the emotion, because I was thinking about it and I would have feelings, but it wasn't until I actually said it, the vibration of it coming out of my mouth, that I felt it. I felt where that emotion was in my body, and it started to move, and it came out as tears. It came out as anger. It came out as so many things. And I do believe that using our voices, you know what I mean? To act that's I think when I really realized what activation really is.
You just described it perfectly. because that is truly it. It's about finding the medium to be able to move the energy and release it and connect to it and open it. And so often the voice is the pathway to do that, right? I would say more often than not, but activation is all about making the choice and doing it in the moment. What I also want to call attention to, though, and yes, you were doing, I think, I don't know where all the timelines were in this, but I don't know if you were doing coaching or if you were just still in some of your leadership role, but your clarity in asking and also telling your partner what you needed in that moment was also pretty beautiful, because you were very clear on both that you wanted to communicate with him, but that you really wanted him to just listen. Yeah. That you weren't asking necessarily for feedback or coaching or him to do anything other than be that support for you. And so often it's, you know, even as a fixer, you understand this. Sometimes we hear things and we go into that problem solving mode when that's not what the energy that's needed for the other person. How did you learn to advocate so clearly for yourself in your life, even before you'd come to this moment of release and activation?
Oh gosh, I feel like I sucked at it most of the time. It was such a process. And actually, you know, for so long, I feel like even in my marriage, you know, I kept people at arm's length. I thought I was open. I thought that
you and me both, by the way. I totally know what you're saying. I didn't mean to cut you off. Keep going. But like, I totally understand that feeling.
Right. Like I was, I had this wall up around me. And I think as any really sensitive soul would do, and I definitely I'm very sensitive, and I recognize that. And I processed a lot of things when I was younger, almost like as trauma, like I would be traumatized by being called out by a teacher, you know, for doing the wrong thing. Like, I mean, I just took it all so personally. And anyway, so when I got into when I married Rudi is when, and one of his things that he excels in is communication. Like he knows how to speak his mind and say what he wants. I did not, and it made me very uncomfortable for a long time. I remember we actually, like, our first official fight when we were married, he had been out, I don't know, with his brother, like golfing all day. And we had this kind of role, like he would do the yard and I would clean the house. Well, in the wintertime, there's nothing to do in the yard, but I continued to clean the house. And I never said anything. And one day he came in, he's like, "Are you okay?" Cause he could kind of sense something was wrong. And I was like unpacking the dishwasher, but like loudly, like clanking everything. And then I just blew up. I was just like, "You never do the dishes." And you know what I mean? Like I just literally, he was like, "Whoa, what just happened?" And rather than getting angry and upset, he was like, "Well, freaking finally, man. Like, okay, here's some feeling here. Here's what you're really thinking." And but it came out as like tears and just like, you know, I just would press it and then it would like blow up. And so I think that it was, to be honest, it was a bit forced out of me. And I was with the right partner for me, because he patiently would say, "But I really want to know how you feel." And I'd be like, I don't even know how to tell you what I feel, because when you don't allow yourself to feel, you have a really hard time connecting to it. So it was actually this healing process that allowed me to start to connect with it. So I could even verbalize, like, this is what I'm feeling right now.
By the way, on a total sidebar, I feel like Rudi and I were probably brothers in another life or something. Like, we feel so deeply connected in so many ways. And there are so many similarities that we share in even our skill sets and our gifts and the way we view the world. And even as you're sitting here talking about this, I'm like, of course he was the one pulling you out of like retreating into your shell. Like, that's what it was in my house. I'd be like, "Babe, I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what you're feeling unless you put words to it." Like, right? Like, I mean, years. And there would be like, "No, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. No, I'm fine." It would avoid it and it would blow up. And I'd be like, "All right, now we're getting somewhere. Thank you." Right? Like, it's like all the way to the T. To the point as well, I shared with my wife just last week after spending some more time with Rudi. Every time I hear him talk about your kids, my kids jump into my mind. And I don't feel that way with lots of people, but like, we're clearly raising our children in a very similar thought process, feeling, belief. And I can't wait till our entire families can get together, because it'll be a blast. Thank you truly for all of the ways that you talk about this. I know that we've got a little bit of a shorter time for some of this conversation. So I'm going to ask a couple kind of rapid fire questions that I really want to make sure that we cover before wrapping. You specifically talked about in your intake form, and you know they're brief in my world because I don't predetermine questions. But what jumped out at me is that you are a master numerologist. And yet I also know you're deeply intuitive. You're a healer. There's all these other pieces that are tied to you. I'm fascinated by the concept of numerology. I've looked at it. I like it. It all makes sense to me. I'm nowhere near considered a master, but when you look at numerology and what that practice, what reaching and accomplishing mastery and how it shows up in your work, how does it inform you? How does it direct you? Why is it such a powerful tool for you or anyone to tap into?
Great question. I feel like numerology was one of those things that like it chose me. You know what I mean? That's how it felt when I like first discovered it.
Yeah.
It was this deep remembrance. It was like this, everything just clicked in and then I was obsessed. I couldn't get enough and there was nothing stopping me. I wanted to know everything that there was to know about it. And for me, it was the first time I think I had felt articulated in a way that I had never been able to articulate myself. And it gave a voice to some of the things that what I had been looking at as my weaknesses or what was wrong with me. And I got to see it as, oh, wait, these are just the challenges I came here to learn. Like these are the lessons that my soul wanted to master. So, and everyone has lessons and no one's perfect. I mean, so it really helped me reframe a lot of areas in my life in a short amount of time. And I've studied astrology, I studied human design, and I believe that these are all sacred tools of remembrance. These are technologies that have been around for some of them really long, like numerology and astrology. I mean, they were like the OG self-help methods. Okay. So this is not new. This is old, and I think there's a resurgence of this. How I use this in my everyday is by helping me understand the people around me. Like I am very clear on what is, Rudi and the kids' life path, like, and seeing everyone for the unique individual that they are and that they have their own contribution to bring, but also being able to see, what they came here to learn, because it helps you perceive and look at their challenges through the same lens that you look at your own, right? And rather than, oh, well, he really sucks at that. It's like, yeah, that's something that's his opportunity in this life, really to work through this. I also use it to just help me interpret the energy of what's going on around us. And I think that, we speak in words, the universe speaks in numbers and symbols. Like I think it's giving a language to something that we can't see, right? And that we don't always understand. So it helps me understand the energetic wave that we're riding right now from a cycle perspective. So that I believe we all have free will. None of this is about taking away your free will. This is just kind of like understanding the weather forecast, right? You just want to be a little bit more prepared and to be able to look at things through a healthier lens of, okay, this is the energy right now. Like, how can I best show up right now? How can I harness this? What do I need to gain from this? And so I use it, I helps me get to know my clients on a deeper level, kind of cuts through some of that initial, let's get underneath the mask and then the mask below that and the mask below that. And I find that it triggers an activation of remembrance in a fast way. So I love it as a tool.
Yeah. One of the things as mentors and as leaders, and you've said it multiple times and you do it even live on stage, you ground yourself in humility and accessibility often. Some of it's a learned technique, again, to be able to know how to engage with a room, but that's also just who you are. So it's natural and authentic. That said, there are many people, even with those language, that will look and easily put people like you and I on a pedestal and be like, well, I can't get there and I can't talk like that and I can't tap into those things. And yet we still have our real-time challenges, things that we're still protecting ourselves in, things that we're still working and evolving in. What is an area that you have either recently or for a long time been conscious to within yourself that you are still actively in a growth process or in a remembering process for who you are?
Oh my gosh. Well, how long do you have? Just kidding.
Well, I think you have less time than I do because you got to get somewhere with your son.
I know, right? We've got a Jurassic Park movie to go see. We're taking him to. I think for me, where I'm at right now in my life, I am really shifting how I approach my work, my mission, and just how I from an inner, from a frequency first perspective. Like I'm really digging deeper into that and questioning, why I feel like I need to chase in this one area or force in this one area, because I do believe that when we really start to reconnect with and remember who we are, and when we start to tap into that powerful authenticity, and then we're actually willing to reveal ourselves out into the world, that we are the signal, we are the field, we are the magnet, right? Yep. And that's when you enter a state of flow. And for a long time, I would have absolutely, and I still, I would have taught a lot about manifestation, which I think is a natural step. Mm-hmm. Where I'm being pulled to right now is the embodiment of magnetism and what that really means. Yeah. And I think it's the next evolution. It requires surrender. It requires trust. It requires creating this soft certainty that you relax and you release your grip. Yeah. And when you release your grip and you see where's the natural current flowing, what's coming in, who's coming in, what's leaving, and you stop resisting so much what is, and you open to the mystery, man, because our minds are so freaking limited. And if we're always like, okay, but that's not on my vision board. Well, guess what? Your vision board is limitation. Mm-hmm. And it might be the biggest things you can ever imagine, still a limitation. Yep. But what isn't limited is your spirit. And what isn't limited is your capacity to expand. Yeah. And what if the path for you, the real path for you, is far greater than you ever could have imagined? And that's where I'm at right now.
I love that on so many levels. I would describe myself in a very similar place. I'm playing with becoming gravity right now, right? Magnetism, wherever I possibly can. And it's unprogramming, frankly, all the hustle that we use to receive love, validation, and connection through performance and outcomes for so long in our lives. I love also that you said this, and I didn't realize this until just last week, but I have trust, surrender, breathe tattooed on my left arm. And I know that Rudi's got trust and surrender, and you even rooted that whole answer in trust and surrender. And I'm like, okay, love you guys so much. I know you got to get going here in a second, but I cannot let you finish without telling us a little bit more about The Universe is Hiring. I know it's your book. It's a concept that you use to teach in a lot of your coaching. So please give us some insights. What does that title mean? What are people going to extract from this? How can they find you and follow you otherwise?
The Universe is Hiring it's an invitation. It's like a love letter from the divine to you, reminding you that you have a role to fill, that you are that unique snowflake, the one puzzle piece that will always be missing in the great intricate puzzle that we are creating collectively, that no one else can fill your shoes. And that when you start to remember who you are, which in the book, it's very experiential. It's all about really helping you reconnect with that when you start to express those qualities, because it's not a job title. It's really not it's not about your job and what you're called. It's who you're being. And really at the root of it, it's helping you reconnect to that well of creative potential within you that is just waiting for you to remember. It's waiting for you to come back to it, and then start expressing however you can, as soon as you can, like starting now, like wherever you are, in the smallest little ways, that you will start to feel the relief. You will start to feel a little bit more connected, a little bit more fulfilled every single day. And it essentially gives the roadmap that I've followed and that I've taught to so many people to be able to do that. Because again, it's not something that a course you have to take or something else you have to go and do. It's really about rediscovery is what it is. Mm-hmm.
And I've learned that the more I can allow myself to be, the more I am, and the less I actually have to do. And so much of what you just talked about also is embedded in a tool that you just created called the Magnetic Woman Code. Again, that will be in the show notes for people to be able to step into. So as you're on this process of dialing in your magnetism, you're bringing others along with you. Beautiful. In how all of that works. My friend, I'm so grateful for your time with you today. I wish we had more time, but at the same time, family first always. And I'm super grateful that you're able to go spend some time with your family and your son. Is there anything else you wanted to close with today, or leave any additional thoughts?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much. And I want to say to all the listeners that wherever you are right now, you're in the right place. You're not late. You're not early. Like everything is unfolding. And even if things feel like they're all falling apart, I believe they're actually all falling together. So it's going to be a wild ride. There's a lot of change coming. But know that on the other side of this is a more connected, authentic version of yourself. So
you rock, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for those of you that just saw Anniston flip open her lid and jump in, guess what? The timing is always perfect when you allow it. And so often the things that are most meaningful and most impactful for you will find you. You won't find them. But her transitional story from realizing that she thought she was selfish for trying to discover who she is, also realized it's the least selfish thing she can do by stepping into and bringing as many others along with her. But it all comes down to creating and putting yourself in environments and around people that allow you to have the emotional safety, to have the capacity to even go there, to align with partners that allow you to speak your truth in a moment, who can just listen so that you can activate your own growth and move the emotion and the energy that's required for you to grow. It's absolutely possible. It is not scary, but it does require you to flip open your lid and scan your can. And it's the only way that you'll find the true level of freedom and magnetism that can exist in your life too.
What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.